August 5th, Route 140 south to White Rocks Cliffs. Today was a beautiful day with low humidity, blue skies, and temperatures in the 80s. We drove to Vermont and picked up some squash and corn at a farm stand with an old fridge that had raw cow milk inside. We reached the AT and parked in the parking lot where we had parked in June, and we had hiked north on the trail. Today we are heading south and had to walk across Route 140. We crossed over a footbridge over a small stream, and I made a comment about this bridge being built over this small stream, but nothing was built over a larger stream that we had went over in this area the last time we were here. The trail immediately climbed and went into a nice hemlock forest, then into a hardwood forest, and back into a hemlock forest. We had heard some kind of a strange bird sound in the hemlock forest that we had never heard before. I think that it might have been a baby hawk. We passed some thru hikers heading north, and Dave said that he thought that it was late in the season for thru hikers in Vermont. But there they were. We passed the Keewatin Trail that went back down to the White Rocks picnic area near the road. We had a lot of day hikers and families going up the trail to White Rock Cliff. Some had a lot of perfume on, and we could smell it as they passed by us heading back down to the picnic area. A few passed us going back and said how great the view was, and some said that they did not make it to the view. It was a really hard climb up at about a 30-degree grade and continued up like this to the top. We had planned to stop at the Greenwall shelter on the way up, and we had met a thru hiker at the junction who was heading down to the shelter. The hiker told us that he did not do the 0.3 mile off the trail to the cliffs. We did not want to disturb him, so we continued up the trail to White Rocks Cliff and decided to eat our lunch there. We reached a flat area with a lot of rock cairns everywhere. It was quite a sight, with the area covered in different formation of rock cairns that hikers had made over the many years of hiking through this area. It was very historical. We found a backpack near the trail where the trail leads to the cliffs, so some thru hikers do go off the trail to see the view. The view was very impressive because of the sheer drop down from the edge of the cliff. We had another view of Rutland Airport from here. We sat down and enjoyed the view as we ate our lunch. The pines at the views was very nice, and we ended up having the view all to ourselves as we ate our lunch. Very peaceful. When we saw all the tourists on the way up, we thought that it would be very crowded up here, but it was not, and it was around 3:30 when we had got here. It was a great day. On our way down, we stopped at Greenwall Shelter. We had heard some sticks breaking as we were getting close to the shelter and knew that someone was at the shelter. The hiker that we saw at the view was at the shelter and was staying the night here. He told us that he was through hiking the AT. He was not very friendly or talkative. However, he asked us if he could get a ride to Rutland from Route 140 because he needed to go to the gear store to get supplies. We told him that it was about 4 miles away from here. After thinking about it, he decided not to go today. We had met another thru hiker after leaving the shelter, and he had asked us if we had heard what the weather forecast was for the next few days was. We told him that when we had drove out here that we had heard that it was forecasting showers here for the next 3 days. He looked disappointed. Today was an A-plus day for the trail and the weather. We had seen a woodpecker today and had heard some birds. The highlight of the hike was the hemlock forest, the White Rocks Cliffs, the weather, and some blueberries we found on the trail. Yummy. The low point was the hard climb and the awful gas that I had after lunch. August 6th, Perkins Road south to Lookout Cabin. We stayed at Coolidge State Park in the town of Plymouth last night, not the best campsite. We woke up to pouring rain and drove to Perkins Road. As you remember in June, we had a hard time finding the trail here because the AT map showed this as Old Town Road. However, a farmer had told us that all the roads in this area was called Old Town Road. We parked at the dead end in the same place that we had parked in June and hiked up about 0.4 of a mile. Everything was wet with water dripping from the trees. The rain had mostly stopped now, but the trail was very wet. The trail climbed through some raspberry bushes and some nettles. The area was really grown in. We had done this section in June, but we could not make it all the way to Lookout Cabin because we did not have enough time that day. We had passed a side trail to Winturi Shelter, and we did not bother to go down to it because we had already been here in June. Last time we'd taken the logbook home and mailed it to the Green Mountain Club because it was full and had let them know that someone had broken the toilet seat and had thrown it into the fire pit. After passing the trail to the shelter, the trail climbed up more steeply through a hardwood forest and some overgrown brush. There was a lot of rocks and roots on the trail here that were slippery from the rain. We climbed up steady for about a mile, or anyway it had felt like a mile, with the heat and humidity and temperatures between 70 to 80 degrees with rain clothing on. Dave had his whole rain suit on, which he said had made it feel even hotter. We saw the sky on the other side of the peak, no view here, and then descended. We reached Old Farm Road, near Lookout Farm Cabin. I liked this section because it had a lot of white birch trees and was flat and wide, so that we were moving a little faster here. We had tried to figure out where Lookout Farm Road was, because the last time we tried to drive to the trail on this road, we never found where the trail crossed it. We couldn't tell where we were in relation to where we had drove in from the last time. The trail had turned off the wide road and went back into the woods. It looked like maybe the trail had been relocated sometime recently. Dave said that he believed that we were close to the lookout cabin, but I feared that it was still much further away. Shortly after, I heard Dave yelled out, "There it is," and we reached the trail junction that went to the cabin. We had come up to this junction last time we went to the cabin, and it was exciting to reach where we were in June, a hiker's delight. We had met a thru hiker, and we had talked with him briefly about our section hiking and meeting this piece that we had done from the other side. He seemed confused about us coming in from another road and then hiking back out. He told us that his camera was wet and not working. We climbed up to the cabin and ate our lunch. This time the wildflowers were out and we found some more raspberry bushes. I picked some for our morning pancakes. We looked inside and the roof was leaking. I'm not sure how much longer this cabin will hold up. No one keeps it up. Even the steps up the cabin are falling apart. Some female thru hikers, maybe college girls, came up to the cabin and climbed up to the observation platform. I was not sure how sturdy it is. They came over and picked some of the raspberries and asked us about a farm that sold pies. We told them that we were not from around here and did not know. We did see a comment in the logbook from a southbound hiker that had ate at a farm near Route 14. He had wrote that he had ate a whole strawberry pie and some bison sausage for breakfast. So the three girls headed out to look for this farm. We headed back down the trail, and the day had gotten more humid, if you can believe it. We saw the hiker that we had seen at the intersection near the cabin, and he had come up behind us. He told us that he had got lost and had walked off the trail quite of a distance away. He said that he had followed a faded white blaze down a hill and ended up on a farm road that looked drivable. We wondered if that was the relocated section of the trail, and that was why we could not find it last time we were here on the road. We climbed back up the hill, and it was so hot that we had to take our rain clothing off. The sun had broken out and the humidity increased more, which brought out the gnats. Dave was being driven nuts by the swarm of gnats all over him, in his ear, nose, and eyes. The buzzing sound was enough to drive us crazy. When we reached the dirt road, we saw a car parked on the road. It looked like a couple was making out in the car. Their head popped up as we were walking by, and they had a look of surprise at seeing us walking on the road. We were so happy when we finally got back into the car and away from the bugs. The air conditioner felt great. We saw no wildlife because it was so wet, hot, and muggy. Well, except for the bugs. They were loving this humidity and had loved feeding on us. We heard some birds and, of course, a lot of annoying buzzing sounds. The high point of the hike? Well, let me think about that. Oh, yes, the cabin. I loved the cabin and the raspberries. The low point? Well, that's easy. The heat, the humidity, the bugs, the climbs, wet rocks, wet roots, and sweating in our rain gear. We saw lots of wildflowers in this section. We saw some calico asters, wild geraniums, goldenrods, and some small purple flowers and yellow flowers. We also found some type of unknown white fuzzy flower. August 7th, Governor Clermont Shelter north to Cooper's Lodge. Our plans for today had changed a lot. We had planned to take the gondola to the top of Killington Peak and then hike down to the bog bridge that we had turned around at in June, then climb back up and take the gondola back down. However, when we arrived at the ski slope, we found out that the gondola does not open until 10 o'clock, and it was only 8:40. Well, we did not want to have to take time away from our hike, so we decided to just drive over to Governor Clermont Shelter. After all, we know that people do drive to the shelter. Then all we had to do was walk the 4.1 miles to Cooper Lodge. We had already done Cooper Lodge from the south, so we needed to drive around to the shelter because it would be too many miles to hike in from Upper Cold River Road. We only hike at about 1 mile an hour. We found Clermont Shelter Road easily because we were already familiar with the road when we had hiked it in June from Upper Cold River Road. After passing it once, we found the road. It was rockier than I had remembered, and after the car bottomed out a few times, we decided to stop and park on the side of the road and walk the rest of the way to the shelter. 2 hikers passed us on the dirt road the other way and had asked us if we were wearing beekeeper clothing. I guess that they had thought this because we hike in light color sun clothing. The day was really hot and humid again with the temperatures in the 80s. The air was also still, no breeze, and the road climbed up. We were just dying on this climb, and we were doing the same section of the trail that we had done in June. The trail continued to climb after we passed Governor Clermont Shelter to the bog bridge. After the trail became muddy and rocky in the hardwoods, we were covered in sweat and my glasses were all fogged up from the humidity. We had drank all of our 2 Nalgene 32 Odzit water bottles and were now out of water. We reached a tree with a big knot on it that looked like an ear. Dave had whispered in the ear back in June when we had done this section and had asked the tree for good weather for this trip. Well, it did not give us any good weather then, so he did not bother to ask for it again. We started to climb up steeper after passing the bog bridge and finally reached the hemlock forest. It felt great to be back into the alpine woods because we knew that we were making good progress on our climb up Little Killington. The trail went onto a ledge that was narrow rocky with lots of big roots and hemlock trees. We were seeing a lot of blue-stemmed goldenrods that were just starting to bloom. A red squirrel ran across the trail in front of us. I love red squirrels because we normally see them in the mountains. We were passing a lot of hikers coming down from the top, and they told us that we were close to the top. It sounded great. It had seemed like we were getting closer to the peak with more views looking to the south. There were shorter pine trees up here, and the pines smelled great. This had made all the suffering, sweating, and exertion from the climb up worthwhile. We reached the Shrewsbury Peak Trail, and we could see the summit of Killington Peak and the gondola station. However, it still looked a long way away from where we were. I was beginning to have doubts that we would make it all the way to the peak. I was also getting really hungry. We did not eat anything the entire hike up. We had walked a long way, about a mile of flat terrain. It was a beautiful pathway and was very pristine. It looked like the other side of Killington. We thought that we would have to climb again. Then all of a sudden, we emerged behind Cooper Lodge. We were happy that we had made it this far. The lodge was cleaner than it was last year, so that was nice, because as you remember, last year the lodge was trashed. We hiked up to the ski lift and ate our lunch on the second ski lift chair. It was very comfortable, and we would have had excellent views from here. However, it was too hazy out. The temperatures was in the 70s up here, but in the 80s down below. There was also a nice cool breeze blowing up here, which was very refreshing. It was like heaven, so peaceful, and like hell below, so hot, muggy, and not peaceful. I would have liked to stay up here and take a nap, but we had 4 miles back down to the car to do. It was a nice thought at the time, but reality has kicked in, so now we had to leave this wonderful area. On the way down, and after we had left the nice spruce forest, we heard a very strange animal sound that we had never heard before. Shortly after, we heard a barred owl. We were not sure if the entire sound we heard was just the barred owl, or if there was another animal that made that noise. After we reached the dirt road, we met two hikers that were covered in sweat. They asked us how far it was to Cooper Lodge, and we told them that they had about 4 miles left to go. It was already 7, and the sun was already on its way down. The woods was very pretty, with the sunlight shining through the trees as the sun was setting. The highlight of the trail was sitting in the ski lift chair and eating our lunch, the nice cool breeze and the nice views we saw on the trail and at the top. The low points was the car bottoming out on the rocks, the humidity, the heat with no breeze, and the hard hike up. We had seen some goldenrods and some purple stem asters.